I would go back to the fact that when he gets to Princeton, Machen gets to Princeton in 1902, 1903, he doesn't really appreciate Voss. As a matter of fact, from his personal notebooks, it appears that Voss frustrates him greatly. At the end of the biblical theology course, one of the great doodles I've ever seen, gigantic pencil, I flunked Voss. And it's obvious that he is not enjoying this.
Yeah.
So what's really, I think the turning point is Voss had an Easter sermon, and that was Rabboni from John chapter 20. And Machen heard him preach it at Miller Chapel, and Machen writes his mother. And it's quite a letter in which Machen basically says Voss is usually too severely theological for Sunday morning, but that this sermon was nothing less than inspiring. And when you go back and look at that sermon, I know Lane also, I mean, it's one of the great sermons that I've ever read. I can't even imagine hearing it preached. But in it, it's the risen Christ meeting this believer and coming to her in this tenderness of love and reaching out to her, but yet the fact that it's all predicated on the historicity of the event. So Voss shows Machen that there's not this dichotomy between the historicity and that covenantal communion that takes place through the person and work of Christ. And I think that really has an impact upon Machen, that he starts to, I mean, obviously Machen's going through a transition in which he goes to Germany in 1906 and he's with Hermann and he's thinking through these things. But really, if you start to look at what he's doing later on and like the origin of Paul's religion or what his faith or some of his, obviously Christianity, liberalism, Machen keeps on coming back to the fact that you do not have to have a separation between history and theology, as the critics are saying, and also that Christ is not that you're not looking at Jesus as a moral reformer or teacher or great man or example. You're primarily looking at him as the Redeemer, as the Son of God come in the flesh. And I think it's all seen right there in that sermon. I know that's a lot for a single sermon, but you look at it, and it's one of those sermons where you can't take your eyes off of it.
Yeah. You can get that and read it in Grace and Glory, right? Rabboni's right in there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's tremendous. I mean, Lane, when you read Machen, not just when you see him in the history and you see the things that he did, but when you read Machen, do you see Voss's imprint there as well?
Yeah, I just wrote a little something the seminary asked me to do, which I think every faculty member was asked to write about 1,000-word statement about how Voss had impacted us in given areas in his Christianity and liberalism. And I was just struck afresh that when he's talking about the supernaturalism and theocentrism of the kingdom, of which Christ is Lord, the ascended Christ, and lays such great emphasis on that historical transition that occasions resurrection and ascension and so on. I was really struck by the way you can see Machen grasping I think Danny says it this way, and I love the way he puts it, the movement away from idea to event. And that event being the actual historical calendar time crucifixion and glorification of Christ.